What's up, guys? Thomas from FT Speed. It's been a minute. Hope you guys are having fun, as much fun as you can during this whole quarantine stuff. Today we're going to be reviewing the Faction Fab lowering springs that are on the BRZ. They've been on the BRZ for like 2 months now, so we're going to give it a full review, but that means that we have to go outside where the corona lives. So 1 second. Got a couple squirts of that. Okay, let's go. Ugh. Okay, before we set off, let's go ahead and cover, I'm making my glasses foggy. Let's go ahead and cover the factory specs of the factory springs and then compare them to the Faction Fab lowering springs. So these lowering springs are 230 inch-pounds in the front and 250 in the rear. Now let me look at the factory ones. Factory springs on FRSs are 128 inch-pounds in the front and 212 in the rear, and then on the BRZ it's a little bit different, 151 in the front, 195 inch-pounds in the rear. So you're getting a pretty substantial increase in stiffness for these springs, and then you're also going to get a drop of 1 inch in the front and 0.8 inches in the rear. Since these springs have settled, we'll go ahead and measure that to see how close they are in real world measurements. But that's about it. They should soak up some of the bumps because they are a progressive spring rate. So you're kind of having like two spring rates in one. You're getting like a softer one that should absorb some of the smaller bumps and kind of feel more like stock, but then when you really get into it and you start cornering, that's when you're going to get the much stiffer spring, and that's when it's going to handle more. You're going to get the lower center of gravity benefits from being lower, and then also you're not going to be swaying as much because your springs are pushing you back up. So let's go see if that's the case. Let's go test this on the streets. We're heading over to an industrial area, so hopefully there'll be some potholes that we can test how this feels on a rough road. Now going over like little bumps, you don't notice. It feels like stock, but once you get to like a little bit bigger of a bump, that's when you notice like it takes up most of that progressive spring, and then you hit the much stiffer spring, and then you know you're on a much stiffer suspension. But still, not uncomfortable. As far as the ride height goes, like, I don't really notice that I'm lower. It's only 1 inch in the front and 0.8 inches in the rear. But I think it's a little bit more than like an OEM plus. Like, you're getting more aggressive, but not too aggressive. So it's kind of a perfect balance of daily driver. If you kind of zone out, you don't remember that you're on a stiffer spring. But then if you see a corner and you want to dig into it, you definitely can. Oh yeah. Traction control definitely bit in, and I couldn't put my foot down anymore, but it held. Like, that was a good corner. So just a pretty good job at helping with body roll. Also, heel toe downshifts on this new clutch. This is nice. Now I also noticed when you launch the car, you don't get as much surge weight transfer back because the springs are stiffer in the rear, which makes sense. Let me show you. Now I kind of wish we had these springs on the 8.6 when we were driving down to Atlanta. Granted, you know, that's when they crashed, but whatever. We had Fortune Auto coilovers on there. Like, not the stiffest coilover, but definitely you could feel it, and everything bumped and everything rattled. Everything was super stiff. This would have been way nicer to have on a road trip. So, I mean, if you're doing road trips, if you're using the car like as a normal car and then also supplement with some fun in your daily driving, then I think these springs would go a long way. Or any lowering spring. It's really up to you at the end of the day. Plus they're cheap. Like, lowering springs are really, really affordable. Like, I know coilovers are coming down in price, but I'd probably rather have lowering springs over a really, really cheap coilover, but that's just me. You can do whatever you want. If you want the height adjustability of a cheap coilover, then definitely go for it. But if you don't need height adjustability and you just want a little bit stiffer than stock, you want a little bit lower than stock, but you don't want the pains and the expense of coilovers, then lowering springs make perfect sense. All right, so we're back at the shop now, and as the description says, we're giving away one of these Faction Fab lowering springs for one of you guys. All you have to do is have an order number from the month of March, this month, and write that in the comment section down below. We'll announce winners like next new products video, new products of April. Speaking of the month of March, March 31st is when the sale, the tax return sale with code TS2020 that saves you 12% off, that ends the end of March 31st. So if you haven't gotten anything and you want to win these lowering springs, make sure you make an order and use discount code TS2020. It'll save you 20% off. So there's that. Good luck. Okay, so let's go ahead and get ride height measurements. We're gonna go from the center of the wheel up to the top of the lip. We're at 13 inches to 3/4 of an inch. Then over at the rear, from the center also, we're at 13 inches and 5/8. All right, so our numbers for ride height. The stock numbers we had for the front were 14 and 5/8 inch, and the rear they were 14 and a half inches. Now when we put the lowering springs in, we got 13 and 3/4 inch in the front and 13 and 5/8 inch in the rear. So with some math, that equals 7/8 inch drop even from front and rear. So advertised it was supposed to be an inch in the front, 0.8 inch in the rear, so we're getting 0.88 inch drop overall. So what, you're an eighth of an inch off from the advertised in the front. So I mean, that's nothing. To me, that's pretty accurate. This isn't a substantial drop anyways. If you want more of a drop, if you're really, these springs I think are best suited for a daily driver that still wants OEM drivability, but you just want a little bit more fun. If you just want more for looks and you're on a really tight budget and you want to stay within the lowering springs realm, there's a much more lowering springs that give you more aggressive, like almost twice the drop that these ones give you, and totally go for those ones. These ones are more OEM plus, a little bit more aggressive than OEM plus, but you're not being dropped a whole bunch, so you're definitely not going to be scraping if you got a pretty big lip in the front when you're going on your driveway, unless you got a big driveway. So there it is, daily driver focused. You're not going to get a ton of ride height lowering. You're gonna get some. It's gonna look a little bit better, but it's not gonna be super aggressive. These are not aggressive. If you wanna go aggressive, then get some lowering springs that go lower, or get some stiffer springs, or go and get some coilovers. Coilovers are gonna be more expensive. You can get height adjustable, but for me personally, I'd rather have this over really cheap. I don't wanna use that word because they're affordable. Yeah. There's so many preferences. So if you are stuck and you can't decide whether lowering springs or affordable coilovers, send us an email at sales@ftspd.com. We can kind of talk to you, and based on your needs, your goals, we can recommend the right suspension setup for you. So there you have it. Those are the Faction Fab lowering springs, and see you guys in the next video. The lowering springs, go ahead and order now because it ends soon. I need to redo that. One of you YouTubers, that's weird, down in the comment section below. Also for the fuck me, what the fuck am I saying? One of these lowering springs away. That's weird. Why did I say that? No, the comment section, not the description. Balls. Why is this so difficult?